Rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in.
Good morning and welcome to the UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual freethinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Karen Alvarez, your worship associate for this morning. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway. And whether it's your first visit or your 1,000th, we're glad that you came. I do have a few announcements to share with you today. Please wear a mask. Masks are available for anyone who forgot one. We aren't able to sing in unison yet, but humming, dancing, swaying, and other expressions are strongly encouraged. Childcare will be provided this morning by Danielle Lyon, and we'll be collecting the cards for Joys and Sorrows after our first hymn. Please fill them out or type into the chat box on Zoom if you have something you would like to share. Next Sunday will be a virtual service on Zoom only. Team 6 will be kicking us off for this year's Guest at Your Table program. Are there any other announcements for the good of the community?
I have one, which is that our admin, Scarlett, is updating our church directory and has possibly already reached out to you for updated contact information and permission to put that contact information in a directory that other members will receive. But if not, and your phone number, address, or email address has changed in the last few years, we ask you to reach out to Scarlett and let her know. You can reach her at admin@canandaiguauu.org.
As we prepare to be fully together, I remind you to silence your phones and devices. We now enter a space of worship. Lauren and Isabel will be lighting our chalice this morning. I invite you to join with us in our chalice lighting words as the flame is lit. If you don't know them by heart, they're number 448 at the back of the gray hymnal. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
From all that will below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land, in every tongue.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's so good to be with you today. In the summer, which I know feels very far away, I grow dahlias in my garden. I'm by no means an expert gardener. You don't even want to know how many times a season I have to run to Petra Pageman to ask her for urgent advice. But their magnificently fat blossoms bursting open as big as my head, to me, are worth the trouble. They're one of the more difficult plants for an amateur gardener to keep, though, especially in this zone. In warmer areas, they're perennial. They come back year after year, but here, their tuberous roots need to be dug up after the first frost and saved somewhere dry and cool, but not freezing over the winter. This fall, you may remember, we had a very late frost. I was tempted to go and dig them up ahead of the frost, to get the gardens all tidied and put them to sleep for winter at what I felt was the proper time, to finish the work in what felt like the right order. But I waited, and I waited, and waited. This year creeped toward Thanksgiving with no hard frost yet, but I took Petra's advice to let a frost come first. See, the plants need that dying time. They need the nudge of frozen air to trigger them to send their nutrients downward into those roots before we dig them up. I'll admit I'm not exactly a winter lover. I am happiest on a warm summer day where I can see all the bursting evidence of abundance all around me. But this year I waited and I prayed for a frost. And I think that's why we come to church. Here we remember that the spirit of life is real, even when the evidence we see of it is quiet and still, not bursting all around us. Here we know that sometimes dahlias and humans need to be reminded of a season of rest and time to turn inward. Let's turn inward this morning. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, to sing with us, to hum with us, to sway, to clap, to move your body, to our opening hymn, number 391, Voice Still and Small.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Now is the time in our service when we bring forward our joys and our sorrows. We're a community that holds one another in our biggest joys and in our deepest sorrows, in our celebration and in our pain. And in all of these things we say to one another, we are with you. So I invite you, if you have a joy or sorrow on your heart this morning, to write it on the card you find in your hymnal, to type it into the chat box in Zoom, and to pass it forward as the basket comes your way now. And now it's time for a story. This morning's story comes from my favorite children's book of all time, Owl Moon by Jane Yolen. And I'll hold it up so you can see the pictures, but in case they're hard to see from where you're sitting, I'm going to leave the book on the table behind me after the service, and I want you to feel free to come and thumb through it as you like. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us, a train whistle blew long and low like a sad, sad song. I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out trains and dogs for a real long time. And when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on towards the woods, Pa and I. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow as little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. We reached the line of black pine trees, pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," the sound of the great horned owl. Again, he called out, then again. After each call, he was silent, and for a moment we both listened. There was no answer. Pa shrugged, and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said sometimes there's an owl, and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt hot and cold at the same time, but I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I'd ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kind of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us, seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed. Pa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over my scarf, over my mouth, and I listened hard. Then Pa called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." I listened. I looked so hard, my ears hurt and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. Hoo, 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 hoo. Pa almost smiled. Then he called back, just as if he and the owl were talking about supper or about the woods or the moon or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf, off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl's shadow, part of a big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe 100 minutes, we stared at each other. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without a sound. It flew back into the forest. Time to go home, Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud, but I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Pa says, the kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. The end of today's story.
Oh, now in peace. Oh, now in peace. May the love of all surround you everywhere you may.
Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts support our church in its work. That work is summarized in our covenant. The covenant for UUCC says, in service of the values that unite us, we will recognize the inherent value of each person, foster a community of compassion and caring for all, value our diverse opinions, and engage respectfully in all interactions. 1/4 of our plate collection for the frozen season goes to Metro Justice, an organization that seeks a better, more just world, free of economic, racial, and social injustice. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or a check into the basket, or if you're joining us from home, by visiting CanadeguaUU.org/connection/donate, or mailing a check to UUCC at 3024 Cooley Road, Canandaigua, New York, 14424. In either case, make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering.
We have lots of joys and sorrows on our heart this morning. First, I want to make space for the enormous sorrow this week of the loss of Sam Hall, one of our members who died suddenly early in the week. We grieve for Sam, and we sit also with the joy of having known his beautiful presence among us. We're also remembering Pat and Bill's sister-in-law who passed away after a long illness last week, and the loss of an anonymous loved one. We're keeping in our thoughts and prayers Cortland Bradley's son, Jack, as Gigi holds him closely in her heart while he recovers from surgery. and we lift up a joy and gratitude for sunny, crisp, and lovely winter days. For these and all the joys and sorrows left in the silence of our hearts, I will drop a stone in the water and remind you that we are with one another in all of this. I invite you now into a time of centering and meditation, followed by shared silence. I invite you to get comfortable where you sit. Maybe let some part of you find the floor or your chair or couch feel supported and held by this good earth. Take a deep breath in and let it out with a sigh. Off we tromp, the dog and I, over the winter field with snow so deep and wet that I lift my knees nearly to my chest to move through it. Just a quick walk, I tell the brown ball of fluff turning white with clinging snow as he bounces along. I have so much to hurry back to at home. This creature who does not understand the meaning of schedule hesitates at every bare twig pushing up through the weight of winter, pauses to bury his head and sniff for sleeping rabbits in unseen warrens, stops to listen, front paw pointing with the grace of far-off ancestors at every bird call. We watch the lazy nuthatch do her upside-down dance on an old sycamore as we come to the trailhead leading deep into the winter woods. The dog looks up at me, pleading but silent. Silent also are the bare trees, having long ago sent all their energy into the earth to rest. I sigh and start down the long trail, one measured footstep after another, joyous friend at my heel. Who am I to rush when every blessed bit of creation is calling out in this time, go slowly, go slowly.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots boldly close, wings set me free. Spirit of life.
I have a reading to share with you this morning by Parker Palmer. It's from his book, A Hidden Wholeness. He writes this. There was a time when farmers on the Great Plains, at the first sign of a blizzard, would run a rope from the back door of their house out to the barn. They all knew stories of people who had wandered off or been frozen to death, having lost sight of home in a whiteout while still in their own backyards. Today, we live in a blizzard of another sort. It swirls around us as economic injustice, ecological ruin, physical and spiritual violence, and their inevitable outcome, war. It swirls within us as fear and frenzy, greed and deceit, and indifference to the suffering of others. We all know stories of people who have wandered off into this madness and been separated from their own souls, losing their moral bearings and even their mortal lives. The lost ones come from every walk of life: clergy and corporate executives, politicians and people on the street, celebrities and school children. Some of us fear that we or those we love will become lost in the storm. Some of us are lost at this moment and are trying to find the way home. Some of us are lost without knowing it. Some of us just reached for the rope. Others are in the middle of the journey trying to keep hold of our grip. Others have just arrived home. My own experience of the blizzard, which includes getting lost in it more often than I like to admit, tells me that the soul's order and life's hope can never be destroyed. It may be obscured by the whiteout, yes, without a doubt. Yet by grace and gifts, through both mysterious blessings and the common compassion of friends, that rope is always close at hand, offering time after time the chance to regain our bearings and find our way home again. Friends, this is, for me, your favorite burn it all down social justice snowflake, a soft sermon, promise. But we do need to begin it with a few hard facts. First, I need to tell you this thing that you probably already know. Tiredness is a trauma response. And I'm going to say it again in a different way. Your tiredness is a trauma response. Your kids' tiredness is a trauma response. Your partners, your coworkers, your parents, your neighbors, your fellow congregants' tiredness, it is a normal, healthy response to trauma. We are living through a real and massive trauma and all the micro traumas it ripples out into. We are doing constant risk assessments for ourselves and for those around us. We're faced with making moral choices, often between our physical and emotional health, between danger and isolation, that have no good answers. And we are living in a society that is mostly insistent that we live like everything is normal. Of course, we're tired. It's not just the sheer exhaustion of so many awful choices or the lethargy that comes from feeling lonely for so long. It's the soul deep moral weariness that trauma creates. And here's another hard thing. It's okay to not be okay right now. I know we're all supposed to be washing dishes while the kitchen's on fire, but it's okay if you're freaked out about the freaking kitchen fire of pandemic and economic insecurity and climate collapse and our own reasonable exhaustion. It's real, and it's okay to not be okay with it. We are seeing a massive exodus from the workforce in these last 2 years. Some of that is not an active choice. Almost 2 million women, for example, the majority parents of children under 10, have been forced out of the workforce because of childcare needs. The number of people unable to work due to disability has skyrocketed. But we're also seeing a massive opting out of work. especially in fields with high levels of stress and health risk paired with low rates of pay, like hospitality and retail work, and in fields with high levels of moral injury paired with low respect, like healthcare, teaching, and childcare. What I mean to say is this: if you are not okay, you are not alone. If you are tired to the point of soul weariness, that is to be expected. We all are. If survival means something different now than it used to, good. Let your fatigue and your unease be invitations to you, like the cold winter winds of a blizzard that invite you to grab onto what is firm and true, to find shelter and warmth. Let these signposts do the same. I want to invite us in this frozen time not to ignore the hard things we're feeling, but to let them guide us into softness, to the soft welcome of the home fire that burns deep within always. We often make the mistake, I think, of saving some of our best eco-theology for springtime. Lo, the earth awakes today, we sing, but not before Easter. We don't do a whole lot of praising of the beauty of the earth in February. And it's understandable. But the earth is teaching us so much in this frozen time. We can learn from the flowers in winter, if we are willing, how to let what is unnecessary die away. We can learn from the heaps of snow how to go slowly, give our attention to each measured step along the way. We can learn from the icy lake to hold up a mirror of self-reflection. We can learn from the bare trees to turn our energies downward, inward, to find the warmth of a hearth burning way deep down inside. This past week marked the observance of Imbolc, or midwinter, in pagan and earth-centered spiritual practices. Imbolc falls at the midway point between winter solstice and spring equinox. The name Imbolc probably comes from the Old Gaelic for in the belly, both because it connotes us being in the belly of winter and the beginning of sheep breeding season. Imbolc and shepherdry is associated with veneration of the goddess Brigid. Traditionally in Scotland and Ireland, Brigid has been symbolically welcomed into the home of practitioners with a pre-spring cleaning, a candle or a hearth fire lit, a meal prepared, a bed made up, as one might do for any guest. Ancient and modern paganism alike include offerings to the hearth fire or bonfire on this day. And some of these midwinter traditions have transitioned into the Christian holy day of Candlemas also this week, where Christians bring candles to church to be blessed to use throughout the rest of winter. And these days are marked like spokes on the turning wheel of the year because they are in between times, the moment between seasons, the moment we shift from moving into winter to moving out of it. And like the ancient ancestors before us, we would be wise to use this moment to welcome in the spirit that shepherds what is growing deep in our own bellies. It is a time of making holy space for the love that holds and sustains the self that is folded inside all the layers we surround it with. At this midwinter time, let us sweep out the houses of our inner being, stoke the fires inside, create a warm and cozy space for our soul to arrive and feed it well when it does. Because yes, you are tired. You should be. And no, you're not okay. And that's okay. Because there is a you that is most truly and wholly you, somewhere within, who is strong in the softest way, who is steadfast and steady, who was made to survive the harshest of winters. Parker Palmer, whose words we heard earlier, said, like a wild animal, the soul is tough, resilient, resourceful, savvy, and self-sufficient. It knows how to survive in hard places. I learned about these qualities during my bouts with depression, he writes. In that deadly darkness, the faculties that I'd always depended on collapsed. My intellect was useless. My emotions were dead. My will was impotent. My ego shattered. But from time to time, deep in the thickets of my inner wilderness, I could sense the presence of something that knew how to stay alive even when the rest of me didn't want to. That something was my tough and tenacious soul. But he also says that like a wild animal, the soul will hide away if we go crashing through the woods to find it. I think of his imagery when I visit the birdsong trails at Mendon Ponds Park. Have you been there? People often feed the birds there. So in winter, all sorts of birds gather in the trees beside the trail. And if you're very still and patient and come with something delicious, like black oil sunflower seeds, birds will eat right out of your palm. I have fed brave little chickadees and fast finches who zoomed in and out, and fat juncos, and even once a downy woodpecker. I had to wait a long, long time in the cold for that first bold bird to land on me. But I never felt like it wasn't worth the wait, worth the work of stillness and calm, of making my own heat in the chilly woods. The thrill of that tiny, warm body making contact with mine, impossibly light, and holding on to impossible trust in some still patient giant was an immeasurable gift. I wonder if we can be as patient and welcoming to our own deepest selves, to the wild animal of our soul. Can we run a rope to the home inside ourselves that is warm and welcoming, not a harsh word or a cruel thought to be had there? Can we find the warmth within that will be hospitable to our souls? What is it that warms the heart of the truest you? Can you feel immeasurably blessed by your deepest self as it shows up, ruffled feathers and all? Parker Palmer offers some real and tangible ways of doing this welcoming work. He suggests that deep listening and caring community, even a community of just two people, can create a circle of trust for our truest selves to emerge. We do this work with intention in our Soul Matters groups, telling our stories, our thoughts, and our feelings, and listening to others without fixing, advising, or setting them straight. We do this work sometimes inadvertently in our conversations here at the end of service, or in the Zoom chat, or in the phone calls we make to check in on one another. I think there are other ways of leading ourselves to this house of welcome too. Other guide ropes we can set out for the soul. There is the invitation ringing from the mouths of prophets across the ages to sit still and listen. We could give ourselves the gift of time and stillness this winter, to let the wild animal of the self alight in our heart. And if sitting still feels impossible or painful, we could move. We could choose yoga or walking through the woods or dancing in our bedroom to be a place of welcome for our weary souls. It could be as simple as standing at the kitchen window, watching snow fall with a warm cup of tea, as long as we are awake to that moment. It could be finding a movie or a book or a person who makes us laugh until our laughter draws us right into the center of ourselves. It could be play, calling us back to the moments of childhood when our truest self lived right at the surface of us. And we do have a playground right outside, I'm just saying. Any of these moments and more can be a space of welcome to our deepest selves, as long as we don't go crashing through them with our plans and our worries, our frenzied expectations and spiraling to-do lists. I invite you to show up for your moment in a warm and patient welcome, and see how your tired soul can find its way home. I know you to be such caring people. You check in on one another. You all feel it deeply when one of you is hurting or celebrating. You give each other rides and bring each other food. You care for this community, for this town, for this earth. You hold yourselves accountable to one another. And when you say every week during our joys and sorrows, we are with you, I know that you mean it with all your hearts. And so I'm asking you today to be such caring people to your own selves. If you are tired, if you are not okay, could you take care of your soul the way you do for others? Can you invite the youest you to come home? Can you make a space of welcome, love, and hope for the still small voice in you to show up? And then can you say, like I know you do every week, I'm with you. May it be so. Amen.
This is a song called The Hope Machine. I sort of interpreted it as the hope in your heart. Every day I jump out of bed, splash water all over my head, brushing up my teeth and make sure my ears are clean. These days you gotta be strong, so I do a push-up and sing a song. I pick on the guitar, stamp on the tambourine. Always good to change my socks, know the tools in my toolbox, learn the people good, but learn myself the best. Don't get lonesome, stay glad, take a bath and wear some plaid, work when I can work, but don't forget to rest. Dream good all night long, rise up and sing your song. They said life is hard and they're not wrong, so keep that hope machine running strong. Ideally, plan what you can plan, dance when you can laugh at yourself and make up your own jokes. A little bit of fun, a little bit of growth, hopefully a little bit of both. Love your mom, love your pa, and love all kinds of folks. Talk quiet and listen loud, teach humble and learn proud, scuffle with the struggle and wrestle with the pain. Open homes, open blinds, open hearts, open minds, let in the sunshine, let in the rain. Dream good all night long, rise up and sing your song. They said life is hard and they're not wrong, so keep that hope machine running strong. Keep that hope machine running strong. Ideally, ideally, ideally.
Even when the surface is hard and frozen, we know there's a river flowing deep within us. May we always remember. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit. Sing if you're at home, and if you're here, hum, sway, dance, clap along to our closing hymn in the Teal hymnal number 1007. There's a river flowing in my soul.
it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. If you don't know them, they can be found at number 456 at the back of the gray hymnal. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I guess I'm talking to myself. Oh, there's Judy. Maybe. Pat, we're the only ones unmuted.
Jeannie's
I'm
unmuted.
unmuted now.
Jeannie's
Hi.
unmuted. Hi.
Hi,
That was fun, wasn't it?
it was a good hoedown song.
Yes. Was it one of Bill's? Does anybody know? Or I usually ask him, but
I don't know. What? How are things in Seattle, Pat?
Things are good in Seattle.
Yeah?
Looks like it's going to be a fairly warm day and might be sunny. There's blue sky.
It's a pretty day
Still
here
early
too.
in Seattle,
Oh.
it's 8 o'clock.
oh, we have sun and blue sky too. Oh,
Yeah, but we got cold.
oh yeah.
I
Well,
look at the weather every morning in Caledonia and I think, oh, I guess I am a snowbird now.
we wanted you to come back eventually, you know.
April.
April. Okay.
So I know my daughter's back on her feet. For those of you who didn't know, my daughter's having surgery later this month on a foot, and she's going to be about 8 weeks with no weight on her foot.
Wow.
She has an extra bone that few people have that's deteriorating in her foot and apparently tearing up her tendons.
Oh, wow.
And so they're going to take it out. She's wearing a boot right now, so the walking that she used to do, like 3 to 5 miles on the weekend and 3 miles essentially every night, she hasn't been able to do. And so we're sort of getting through this,
Yeah.
staying positive.
Right. Right.
Hey,
Well, I
Pat,
wish you all the luck. Yeah.
how
Wow.
did you do, Pat, when you went out on the trail with your new walker?
I did very well. I went through gravel and grass and wood chips when I went out with it. And it makes walking in the city much easier because there's lots of places where there's trolley tracks in Seattle, which tripped up my walker if I wasn't careful. And there's all kinds of cracks in sidewalks. It's not like when I'm home in New York, when I walk, I have to walk on the road because there are no sidewalks. And the road is got a little gravel on it, but it's relatively smooth. But here in the city, some sidewalks are really great, some have cracks, some are deteriorating. There's some roads that I have to cross that have brick crosswalks. All those things play havoc with a normal walker. So my all-terrain walker is working well.
That's awesome. What's the brand on that?
It's a cryonic walker and it's expensive.
Uh-huh.
But since I had 2 months of no plane trips, I had the money to spend on it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Unexpected 2 months of plane trips said, buy a new walker.
Well, you stay safe.
That I'm doing.
Good. Yeah, and I wish your daughter all the best in her recovery. I had a foot issue. I broke a small bone in the bottom of my foot, and it took a long time because your foot's always in motion, so it doesn't heal fast.
Right. That's why they're keeping her in a cast for 4 weeks
Right.
and in a boot for another 4 weeks and telling her to keep her foot off the ground.
Right. And she better do it.
I'm sure she will,
Yeah, good.
because she wants to get back in good shape again. She's going to listen to what they tell her to do.
Uh-huh.
Sort of like somebody who had hip surgery has been listening, right?
Yes. Aha.
Yeah, well, I almost don't need my walker anymore. I do take it out because it's so snowy and slippery and stuff, so I don't want to take any chance at all. But in the house, I don't really use it anymore.
Wow.
3.5 weeks out. I think hips are very easy compared to almost any other thing, knees and feet and stuff. So, so I'm not jumping up and down, but I limp, but I think it's more a limp that I got used to over the last 3 years that I have to try to wean myself off somehow. And there's a little teeny bit, I had a cough there a couple of weeks ago and it felt like it ripped apart a muscle, and that took a long time to kind of heal back up. But so I can't lift the knee up very much, but that's the only things at this point at all. So far, so good.
Can you go to physical therapy?
Yeah, a couple times a week. Yeah. But they're letting me get away easy at this time. We don't, that muscle that's kind of cracked there, we're just gonna let it rest and don't do anything on that. I can do all the other things, so. Yeah, that's what I hear. Our neighbor's wife, she fell in December and I don't know if it's the rotator cuff, it's like 4 muscles that come over the shoulder and it took out the 2 biggest ones of them, and she had surgery the same day as me.
Oh,
She has to sleep in a recliner for 12 weeks or something.
oh my goodness.
So I don't know. I have a little knee brace so my legs stay straight so I don't bend it. Now, right now I'm sitting here with bending it a little too much. But although her and the family went to Vermont this weekend to rent a house, and so she can get around, I guess. Not skiing though, I don't think. Yeah, so that's how that is.
Yeah.
But I'm taking it real easy in here. So, yeah,
Well, that'll do.
and my granddaughter there, they moved down to what's it called? Now I blanked out. Baltimore. Because that's the only place they can find a program that she can be in to try to get rid of some of that OCD stuff. And it was they started last Monday morning, and that was not, she wouldn't eat over there. She was supposed to eat all day long, and it's 7 days a week. But she would eat a snack, but not the real meals, and they still haven't gotten to where she will. It is a rough, rough thing. They had to go all the way down there to find a program like that. There was
Wow.
one small program with a cover 3 times a day in this area,
Yes.
but that's only if you were 12 years and older, and she's still only 11. So.
Oh, geez.
So it is totally disruptive of the whole family completely. But hopefully they will get somewhere on that down there in 4 to 6 weeks or whatever.
Wow.
It's the normal thing. So other than that, we're fine.
And her sister went too.
Yeah, she's gone down too, and so the dad is down there. There's a talk about us going halfway down and meeting them there and taking her big sister home to be here on